Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Jason.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
And welcome back, Joel, because we've missed connecting the last couple of weeks, but I'm glad we're able to talk this week, so that's a good thing.
I'm really grateful to be here tonight.
I think it was about 2 months ago, something like that, we did a conversation on Stoicism.
Yes.
And we did really in-depth. It was great. It was a really good chat that we had. And if you didn't catch that episode, I urge you to look it up. But Jen asked if we could do a follow-up on it. And what she's asking for is actually not a whole lot different from what we talked about. But heck, it's a good topic, so let's bring it in anyway. She wants us to tie it specifically to mental health. And certainly Stoicism plays a major role in mental health. So let's focus on that piece for a bit. Why is Stoicism such an important mindset to adopt when it comes to developing your own mental health?
Well, I think I mentioned this in the show we did. Why it's a direct connection to mental health, Stoicism is the beginnings of what cognitive behavioral therapy is today. So it was the people that had created cognitive behavioral therapy just basically tweaked the concepts of Stoicism. So Stoicism is where traditional therapy, the other forms of therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy is more about just the awareness of reality. It's bringing people into reality. Here are the facts. Yes, your family, your friend died. This happened. And so processing that, looking at it with trying to use it with the concept of you can't control whatever happens, but you can control your reaction to it. So it really plays an important role. And we did a show a few months ago about the different types of therapy. The Freud versus Adler was the name of that show back then. So Adler would be much more of a cognitive behavioral person, Stoicism concept. Stoicism has been around for, ancient Greece is when it really kicked in. Right. But the concepts even go way before in Eastern philosophy. A lot of it is very similar too. So basic concept of Stoicism, breaking down the most basic stuff, is what I said a second ago, that you have zero control over what happens. You have 100% control over your perspective of what happens. And so that's where where that helps a lot of people is acceptance of situations. Like, most people want to focus on my girlfriend broke up with me. She didn't give me a good reason. You replay conversations over and over in your head. You ruminate it about all the time. So Stoicism tells us we take a deep breath. All that exercise, I understand it seems necessary, but at some point you need to say, she broke up with me. I don't know why. And I'm going to have to figure out how to move on. It's just, I can't, instead of rehearsing the dialogue, and we all have had breakups where you overthink and you replay conversations and, what took place. And while certainly it feels necessary to do that, there's never a remedy in that. There's never an answer. I believe when you had your breakup a while back, I kept saying, this is not going to ever, you're not going to have the answers you're asking right now. It's just.
Oh yeah, that was a breakthrough moment. And it was right after it happened. So I was very grateful that you told me that, but it was also one of those, kind of slaps you in the face moments. Like, what do you mean I'm never going to get the answers I want?
And so, so the Stoicism allows us to, focus on the things that are in our direct control. So we have a perception that we control more than we do. We have very few things that are in our direct control. That's when you break down what those things are. You have your perspective of things. You have your effort. You have what you do every day, what you choose to get up and do. The action of other people is totally out of your control. As much as people believe they want to control that, you can't. You can't make somebody, other than your child when they're 5, 6, or 7. You cannot, and they just do it because there's a compliance necessary, and that can, that time. Try to make a 15-year-old do what they don't want to do. It's really difficult concept. You may think you did it, but you won't.
Well, that's even true with the young child. I mean, you may think you got the child to do what you wanted to do, and then you find out, well, not so much.
yeah. And so, I have a natural, I'm very much this guy that if somebody calls and says, Joel, I have a problem. Can you give me a call and let's talk about it? I'm on the phone. Yes, I'll do it. If you call and say, Joel, you need to call me right now. There's zero chance in hell Joel's calling you right now. Zero. You know what I'm saying? Because there's a natural rebellion to that. So Stoicism allows us to me, it's one of the most helpful tools, and it's a bedfellow. When I say that, it's connected to the law of attraction in a lot of ways. It goes along that way. Also, I'm a fan of NLP, neuro linguistic programming, and there's a sort of a Stoicism concept within, particularly around the concept within NLP of reframing. So, let me look at this differently. So these all have sort of backgrounds based in Stoicism. And I find it one of the most, for me personally, not everybody can adapt the mindset, but the classical growth mindset versus victim mindset compatibility concept is based on Stoicism on the growth mindset side. It's just, I have to look for my mission every day is to find the things that are in my direct control and place all of my energy toward that. If I do that, then these other things are irrelevant. But if I'm stuck on what I can't control and ruminating about that creates a depression, anxiety precursor if that's continuous in your life.
I love that. That was a really good summary of what the connections are. And thank you for making all those connections for us. One thing that jumps out to me, and I think you kind of said it, you certainly alluded to it. It's the idea that Stoicism is a way of taking control of your mental health.
Yes.
Rather than being dependent on somebody else for your mental health.
Yes.
Such as a therapist.
Well, in Stoicism, a lot of people mistake. We use the word, he's very stoic. We use that almost as a derogatory description of someone who shows no emotion. That is not Stoicism.
And we actually use it incorrectly. It's not even what Stoicism means.
Yeah, of course not. But that is what a lot of people feel. So Stoicism isn't about not feeling emotions. It's about understanding within the emotions, you have very strong emotions. When my son passed away, Stoicism was very helpful in that. My mindset, I was devastated. It isn't that I was unemotional about it.
Right.
And there was a couple of weeks and I didn't give a damn about Stoicism or anything else. So that was irrelevant. But when I started getting, back on to breathing again, so to speak, and started living again, I understood my mission was to find the areas in my control. His death was out of my control. How can I honor him? How can the things that I could do going forward? But I was not able to obviously sit there and figure out a way. I can't go back and negotiate him not passing away.
Right.
But I can, how am I going to get through this now, as I believe he would expect me to do? So I can use Stoicism when I lost my job years ago before I got into my private practice. I knew, it was a shock when I lost it, but I also knew my reaction to that's in my control. I couldn't control what happened. That was just a came out of nowhere situation. I had an argument with my boss. Now I could either sit around for days, which I did not do. I didn't blink really. But I knew my next step was figuring out my options. And I did it calmly without, stress or anxiety because I knew there's an answer in there. I had multiple job offers within 3 or 4 days from people that wanted me to get back into running addiction treatment centers again.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't want to do that, but I knew that was there if I wanted to.
Yeah, which is very exciting, and it's also reassuring when you go through something like that. That's probably the biggest challenge. You've lost your bearing, so to speak. You've lost your balance, and now you're trying to recover the balance. So when you get offers like that, it's like, oh, okay, the world's not ending. This is good.
Yeah, and multiple calls, multiple opportunity, but I knew I knew something was there, and I didn't really. I took about a month off. I had opportunity.
In fact, if I remember correctly, weren't you actually preparing to take a vacation anyway? You just took the vacation?
The hilarious part was this happened on a Saturday. The following Friday, I already had a plane booked for Anna Maria Island, where I go, where my bench is, and it was like, well, perfect. That's the place I'd have gone anyway. So it was already loaded up.
And then while you're there at Anna Maria Island, that's when you get the call from Dr. Masterson, right?
Yeah. Dr. Master said, "Hey, heard you and Bob had a fight. Why don't you open up your private practice? I got an office right here." And I go, "Oh, okay."
Right. Yeah.
Sure.
Which shows what happens when you don't resist what it is that's going on, what it is that you're trying to learn to respond to.
And also within that, so that becomes very important, because when you're in the exercise of trying to control or think about or ruminate over the things that are out of your control, that gets you aligned with the wrong side of the law of attraction. It makes you feel helpless. It makes you feel stress and anxiety. But when you're able to say, my mission is always waking up every morning, one of the most basic concepts to Stoicism is, let me find what's in my control today and put my energy toward that. Let me put what I can control. Can I break the girlfriend that broke up with me, the client that's mad, the this that's mad, or whatever my situation is? Let me put my energy on where that is there. Stoicism is one, to me, it's such a fundamental. It's hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years. It has been time tested, and I find it so relevant, even more relevant today than I could imagine back then, because there's so much. When you turn on the news, so much is out of your control. I mean, my goodness, it's there's a 45-second, 18 things happen window of craziness.
Right.
And you can't control any of it. But where the Stoicism concept comes in, what can I do today? What is in my control? If politics is driving you crazy, donate to the people you like, show up and vote, do those things. All those things are going to be there. But in the immediate moment, you don't have control. So what does your day look like to put that control in place?
Right. Now, there's an ironic piece to this as well, and I'm thinking partly in the context of what you were talking about a moment ago. Somebody breaks up with you, and you have no control over that, and that's true. But there's also an ironic piece that goes along with it. We don't have control over what other people are deciding to do. But interestingly enough, when we adopt an attitude of taking responsibility for what we can control, we influence what other people do. We can't predict in advance who we're going to influence in what way, but the influence is still there. So we can't control them, but we influence them, and we often do it at the times we least expect it.
Well, anytime when you have a group of people, and particularly people you're close to or connected to, the belief that you can make them do something differently or talk them into something differently is, that gets you being in control of it. But when you change your response to, okay, I can't control this, where can I focus? Their response is required to change as well. So here's a great example. I met this lady, showed up years ago. She's a very wealthy lady. She was referred to me, and she had, as successful as her family was, she had a lot of issues going on.
Okay.
And so one of our first sessions, she was talking about how her son was really messed up. He's an alcoholic. He's nothing worse than a multi-millionaire alcoholic that has no boundaries or anything.
Oh boy, yeah, that's bad.
Yeah. And so she said, so maybe we could talk about him. And I said, I will tell you this. If he ever wanted help, I'd be glad to work with him. I said, but right now, that's not what we work on. You fix you, and his response to you will be different. And she, later sort of confided in me. She goes, that sounded sketchy to me. She said, but I liked what we were working on. So we really didn't talk about him, but I talked about her responding to him. When one of his techniques to get her attention was he would create these catastrophic situations to get her to call, and then she'd send him money, and it just was always this cycle. So stop doing that, but focus on your stuff. And the more we got her to do that, then eventually, that's been several years ago, he's been in solid recovery for several years now. And I think that started when she quit trying to control him and allowed him to feel the consequences, and not get caught up in his drama. And that changed. It was literally like I predicted it would happen, not because I'm a predictor of such things. It's because that's what happens. So when you're with someone, the way you respond to them influences them. If you believe, like, one of my friends several years ago, she was dating this guy, and they were in love. I'm using the deeply in love, obsessed with kind of thing. She's previously married, had a couple of kids. So she started dating this guy, and it was just, in her mind, it was a matter of time before they're going to get married. They had this, she had this image of what's going on. So probably about 2 years into the process, she noticed he started pulling back. And
Mm.
so she basically confronted him, and he admitted, look, I've actually found somebody else. I didn't know how to tell
Wow.
you. We haven't really been together, but we have been talking, and I wanted to talk to you about this. She spent weeks talking to him, just please don't know. I mean, we're in love. You told me this, and he, for whatever reason, agreed to have these conversations over and over and over again. They were never going to go anywhere, but that's what happened. And she reported to me she was obsessed with him. She was following him. He forgot that he was sharing her location. They were sharing locations, and she was literally following, spending all evening just watching where he's driving around,
Wow.
and
She was
and
stalking, basically.
well, yeah, stalking and just ruminating, and just, so that was the mindset that created loneliness, that created a
Mm.
feeling of disconnection. I'll never have anybody. And I don't know exactly how it broke, but eventually that stopped. But getting to the point of, look, I can't fix that. I can't go back. It was real. I'm sure it was real,
Oh
but
yeah.
nonetheless, the rehearsal over it and trying to replay it all and getting to rehash that over and over served no purpose. It was just, she'd almost been better if the guy would have just said, look, we're broke up. I really don't want to do this anymore. But he was trying to be kind and let her down, but he didn't understand. He kept pulling her through the equation over and over.
Yeah.
And
Right.
then later when she started realizing and I told her, you can't control that. And it's eventually we got to a good place, and we're not really close anymore, so I don't know what's going on right now. But that was such an incredible observation to have, because she was so focused on the breakup, and then how can she make him love her again?
Mm.
And that was baffling to her. I said, but we were really in love. You just can't turn that off. And guy found somebody else. It's pretty simple. I mean, it's not illegal to do that, but it was crushing.
Interesting too that she was trying to find some way to make him stay in the relationship, which
Yes.
wasn't going to work well.
Right.
I'm willing to bet. Now, you said you haven't maintained contact with her, so it's hard to know exactly what happened. But I'm willing to bet that after she went through all that, and you helped her to get to the point where she was going to think about things differently, she was going to think about what happened differently. She was going to think about in terms of what she can handle, what is actually within her purview, which was to respond to her own stuff, to her own reactions, to her own choices, and all that kind of thing. I'm willing to bet that at some point in some way that influenced him. Not necessarily to come back, probably not to come back, but it influenced him, unless he lost complete touch with her, simply because when you make changes, it influences people you know. It influences them in ways you don't even predict in advance. You can't predict in advance.
Well, I'm sure it did influence. I don't think they ever spoke again after that finally wrapped
They
up.
may
But
not. Yeah,
and I think he probably was like, oh my God, at some point. And
probably.
and by the way, I didn't work. She was a friend, neighbor. We didn't.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Mhm.
I didn't work with her really. We just had some conversation, but I
I
watched her
got it. Okay.
process. And
Right. Right.
what often happens, and again, I haven't really been in contact with her for a long time, but my prediction, a little different than yours, she's probably in the same situation, just doesn't know it yet.
Because that's what the pattern is,
The
isn't it?
pattern, the cycle of the patterns, they're very predictable when you don't
Mhm.
change, because I don't think she really changed much. So I would predict whatever relationship she's having now, it will be on a similar 2-year cycle, and a similar thing's going to happen.
I think that's why what I was trying to go to with my comic, because I was talking about what happens if she was making changes.
Right.
But the fact is, it's very likely, like you said, she wasn't making changes, because that's what most people do. Most people don't make changes in certain situations like that.
Well, they keep, and we have a tendency to keep changing choosing the same people, the
Right.
same concept, and not realizing the nuances that make that not compatible. And it's one of the things, a different friend, she's a nurse and really smart and bright, has a couple kids, but nurses have a tendency to rescue men always. It's just in their DNA. It's just what they do.
Well, it fits their career path, so it makes sense.
Absolutely. I mean, it's an instinct. It goes along. So this woman she works in the ER, and all these people that end up, usually the drug addicts that end up there, she's going to fix them. And, multiple times she's moved men into her house. They ended up stealing from her. And it's
Wow.
very predictable. And it's she's aware of the cycle and she can't. So I said, why don't you find someone, just not you're finding in the emergency room that's in a mental health crisis? Why don't we expand our search? And she admits, she said, I'm attracted to the neediness, Lisa's identification. And so that, but also, just like an addict's addicted to something that's unhealthy, she has an addiction to the neediness, which leads to that recycling again. So, I tried to get her to, obviously we got to quit taking in, people that have drug addiction that show up in the ER that have nowhere to live. That's just never going to work out good for you. But maybe looking for a different pool of people where, there's you're not going to have that. And, she was working toward that. She's working with a therapist to try to figure out how to see things differently.
Yeah.
And I hope she makes that, because she's one of the nicest, kindest people I've ever known, but she's probably had 8 or 9 of these failed relationships that never had a chance to work in the first place.
Well, that's also what the challenge is too, because if she can make the changes within herself, she will start getting the different results. So that's why I'm applauding her for doing the therapy.
Absolutely. Well, and that's how we have to change the reprogramming of the. So one of the concepts of Stoicism leads to this is a connective. This is a connection that I have sort of made. It's not expressed in scientific terms in Stoicism, but the reprogramming of the subconscious mind is part of the Stoic philosophy, whether they realize it or not. Because you when you start only focusing on the filtering for the things that is in your direct control, then the subconscious brain starts looking for, they starts letting go of the things that are out of my control that I'm going to keep ruminating on, and I'm only going to be filtering for what's in my control. So anytime there's a problem, I get to, what is the solution to the problem? What is that? Not how the problem happened, who's at fault here. I just want to know, what is our solution? What can we do with the situation as it exists?
It's fascinating. It's really fascinating that the Stoics, who were these early philosophers essentially, who came up with this mindset, this theory of how to live a good life. That's pretty much what Stoicism was intended to be, a way to live a good life. It's fascinating how they were also creating psychology long before the idea of psychology was really a thing, but they were doing it.
They in fact, they stumbled, and where this goes, it shows the philosophy, which I believe is a very solid. It's vetted really well. Everybody sort of adapts. The most happy people I know have a Stoic philosophy backing this up. People understand life. You accept things as they are. You don't sit there and just beat yourself up for things that are out of your control. When you understand all that, it makes life a lot better. So they discovered this, and this philosophy. Marcus Aurelius is, to me, sort of the pinnacle of all this.
He's the most famous of the Stoics, really.
Yeah, he's the most famous there. But even Socrates and the other, everybody had a role. But Marcus Aurelius had a position that, he spoke with such, he had an audience that really, he was considered great in his time, because of the audience that he had, and he was a really good person from what I can gather. Obviously, we're getting reporting from that time, so everything could be biased, but it is, the philosophy itself changes really everything you're dealing with in life, because we are almost built to worry. We're built to let's focus on what's wrong. Let's focus on, so while the law of attraction is telling us, what we focus on is what we invite. Stoicism is telling us to only focus on the things that we can control and put your energy and effort toward that, which is a matching concept.
It's not just a matching concept. It's a concept that produces how did you describe it before? I think you described it as a relaxing. No, that wasn't the word, but it was like that. It was the idea that it calms yourself to adapt to the mindset.
Yes. If when the early practices of my Stoicism, as I was digging my way out of the terrible hole I built myself during my addiction and all the stuff that I was having to deal with, that was my early discovery of Stoic philosophy. And and so I was able to look at all that I had to deal with. I owed $250,000 in credit card debt. I owed restitution to the state of Florida. I basically was home. Not basically, I was homeless, living in a
Yeah.
sober living home, and I had to just break it down to where's my control here. What can I do? I mean, I obviously I got $250,000 to have to pay off. I have no money, and I'm living in a sober living home. So where does my power exist? So day one, my power was go find a job.
Mm.
You know, I'm on Anna Maria Island at the time. That's where the sober living home was. Find a job. So the only available job in August of 1995 that would even consider hiring somebody in my situation was a restaurant job.
Mm-hmm.
Plenty of restaurants, good restaurants. So I found a job at a restaurant and I started working. I never waited a table a day in my life. I did lie about that. I said I had experience, but they never. I think they eventually figured out it didn't. But I was good at what I did, so they didn't care. But I found the job, and then when I also realized, and I started slowly paying my rent, and then found another job. Then I found the owner of the sober living home needed a manager, so he let me start staying there for free in exchange for me being house manager. So that got me some little momentum going, and I just kept focusing on that, improving my situation. And as you know, everything I fully recovered from all that. Everybody got paid. Totally turned my life around, and that led to everything. And that started with just doing the thing that's right in front of me that I could do. I I could focus on $250,000 in credit card debt. There was no possible way to pay that in the situation I was in at the time.
And somehow you knew not to. I'm
Yep.
not, I mean, because you could easily have just ruminated on that, but you
Yep.
didn't.
Yeah. And that's where my early Stoic, like what, yeah, I remember, saying over and over again, the concepts that, what I have done, I wasn't escaping responsibility, but the aftermath of what I've done at this point is out of my control. I could stop gambling 5 years before that, but that pathway of stopping the aftermath is gone.
Right.
So my response is that even getting, I don't like to talk suicide or any of that stuff, but even my decision to make an effort became with, I understand there's very little in my control here. And I just have to, in fact, I didn't even really understand how I could come out of this. The situation was so implausible. I thought I will never have a life that matters, or never have a life of purpose. I will never be able to do anything because have a convicted felon, I owe this money. I couldn't even imagine a pathway, but I had to let go of all that. I knew my next step was to simply get a job, whatever that job was.
And if I remember correctly, I think I do remember this correctly, because I've heard the story obviously a number of different times, from all the times you brought up on the show. But I recall one particular time where you talked about how it wasn't that you didn't have many options; it's that for a period of time you only had one option.
Absolutely.
And the simplicity of that made it easy to decide what to do next, because there was really only one option each time.
That life became really easy for me. As crazy as this sounds, once I had, in the beginning, there was two options. I could put a bullet in my head, or I can make an effort. And so that gave me two options. So I obviously eliminated the bullet in the head theory. So
Right. Which
then
brought you down to that one option, by the way. That's where the one option started.
Yeah. So then I got down to one option. One option was go get a job. Who will hire me? There was a restaurant on Anna Maria Island called the Buccaneer Inn. And as a child, it was my favorite restaurant.
Oh, okay.
And it was this gigantic thing. I just started there because I liked it as a kid. I loved it. They hired me the same day. I learned quickly. It wasn't a hard job. It was stressful at times, but nonetheless, I learned it, became really good. Then I found other jobs, and then, as I said, I became the house manager. Then eventually, all that led to the next thing and the next thing. So there was always it seemed like the universe or God or whatever your interpretation of that is, sort of gave me that, okay, well, here's another option. Here's the next option. But there wasn't multiple options, but here's the next option.
Here's the next one, right?
Yeah. And the other part that was interesting is after a few years down in Florida, I was really in a good rhythm. I was doing pretty well. we turned the sober living home called it transitional living home. We turned it into it was specifically for gamblers, but I also went and got the certification to be a gambling counselor. So we started treating people, which offered a little higher level of pay, and I started making a little money there. So I was like, oh my goodness, this is maybe a career's going to come out of this. I couldn't envision being here where I'm at now. And then about 2 years into this, there was my business partner said, we've been contacted. When I say business partner, we weren't a business partner at that point, but I was working for him. He said, South Carolina had a video poker problem. And the president of the South Carolina Council on Problem Gambling was a friend of mine, business partner, and he asked us to come open up a treatment center in South Carolina. And Rick, my business partner, said, I need you to go up there and run that facility. Well, I'm living on the beach in Florida, and I'm thinking, damn it. And so I was only given one option. It wasn't an option to stay in Florida anymore. I could have quit and done something else, but who's going to hire a convicted felon at that point?
Yeah.
So I was down to the one option of having to go to South Carolina, which I did not like that idea whatsoever. Went to South Carolina with the intent of staying up there a couple months and then just saying, screw it, whatever, I got to get back. Fell in love with South Carolina, made incredible connections in South Carolina. That's where I adopted my son, TJ. While I was there, I fell in love with Rock Hill, South Carolina, and the surrounding areas. So I was there, and one of the things that happened randomly on one day, and it's a good thing, but it really affected our business. So the Supreme Court of South Carolina just randomly one day said these video poker machines that are in South Carolina are illegal. They are to be removed immediately and destroyed. So the video poker problem that we came up there to solve was deleted. So that was like, oh, I'm like, okay. And then it became apparent it's hard to make some money up there in South Carolina when we came up there for a specific reason. That business dried up, and then I was randomly contacted by some guy from Virginia that wanted me to come work for him, and that's how I ended up here. So, but each time it seemed like the road was only one option. By that time though, I started accepting that there may be something to this. It felt like this is a path that was intended. It's like, that's random. I want to end up in Virginia, and that's what got me up to Virginia. That's where I got my life together. I mean, things became very successful up here. Started my private practice. Adopted my third son, Justin, while I was up here. It's amazing, and all those things happened just by that next step that was in my control.
So we've spent quite a bit of time talking about your wonderful story of how you were given only one option. Where it ties back for me into Stoicism is that the Stoic philosophy, like you were describing before, is about trying to identify what possible responses you have available to you.
Yes.
The simplicity of your experience was you only had one option.
Yep.
So you didn't have to look far. And once you found it, there was nowhere else to look.
Yep.
It was a very short search.
Well, that's what felt. So when I retrospect, looking backwards, I felt like, man, what? I'm never going to get a break or whatever. I got a bunch of breaks, but they all just came in one option. There was no, there wasn't another option that was plausible or made any sense. So the obvious only option just kept moving me up, up basically the East Coast of America, and ending up here. And so the Stoicism allowed me to see that. And also one of the big learning lessons when I got to Rock Hill, South Carolina was first, I was hell bent on hating the town. I was just, it's hard to go from a resort island to Rock Hill, South Carolina.
Yeah,
it's
that would be
vastly different.
Yeah.
But some of the best people I've ever met, great. I mean, all my connections take place are in the gym. Met a bunch of hardcore people in the gym, that serious weightlifters like me, more than I found in Florida. So I really connected with that group, developed a bunch of friends, it had a great network. It was fantastic. And then, like you're saying, so the idea that I started accepting this concept that there is that next step. The Stoic philosophy allowed me to just reframe instead of getting to South Carolina and hating it, going, wait a minute, everything seems to be going right. So why don't I just, get back to that? I'm here. Let me make the best of what I got when I'm here. And when I did that, that's when the collision of the law of attraction and the Stoic philosophy comes together. I became determined to just love where I'm at instead of me worrying about the destination. Just love wherever I'm at the moment, and then the more I love that area, the more that area loved me, so to speak.
So from a mental health perspective, what was really happening is that your brain was being rewired by a series of one option experiences that followed one after another, to the point that when it came time to perhaps talking to somebody else about it, it was never even a question in your mind that you'd be able to say to them, well, you can always find an option. It's always there, because that was what your experience was.
Yeah. And the option did not appear obvious. In fact, when the options appeared, they were obvious. I didn't like any of the options at first, even though, damn it, I mean, I go down and watch the sunset every single day at the beach, and you're going to send me to Rock Hill, South Carolina. That's hard to accept that in my brain.
But nevertheless, you followed it.
I followed it, and then when I got there, I realized relatively quickly I'm here, and so instead of bitching and moaning about being here, let's find out what I like about here, and I did that, and there's I've developed some very close friendships. I was in South Carolina from probably about 10 years, 8 years, 9 years, and just. In fact, when I had to decide to move to Virginia, I was sad to leave South Carolina. But I also knew that just from experience, I'll be fine in Virginia. Virginia's my home now. I love Virginia. I've got I'm well known. I'm respected. I'm not saying that with arrogance. This is my home now.
Oh, I think it's easy to say, fairly safe to say that is the truth. It's obvious. It's so obvious from anybody who knows anything about you. It's obvious. Funny thing too about Stoicism is that when we are able to adopt it as not just a philosophy, but as a mindset, because that's really what Stoicism is. It's much more than a philosophy. It's kind of presented as a philosophy because that's the way particularly Greek philosophers would write. They would write philosophically. They present things as a philosophy, but it's really a mindset. And it's about setting a mindset and then following that mindset persistently and consistently. And when you do exactly that, you are working on your mental health. You may not even be aware that you're working on it. You are also having influence on others. You may not be aware that, you didn't even know until much later the influence that you're having. And you found that out because you ended up in Virginia helping a whole bunch of people who had mindset issues that Stoicism would help.
Yeah.
It was the last thing that was in your mind. Like, well, I'm going to end up in Virginia so I can help people understand how Stoicism works. That was not on the agenda.
Right.
So this whole pattern comes out of a mindset that perpetuates itself. That's what I was trying to refer to earlier when I was talking about the influence factor. Because the influence factor plays out in ways you can't predict in advance. You
never can predict.
You can't say, this is going to help this person in that particular way, because you don't. You only find out afterward where it helped, where it didn't help, what impact it had, what impact it didn't have. You only find that out by looking backward. You never find out by looking forward at it.
Completely.
To me, that's a really important piece to understand.
It is.
Because I don't know, maybe it's just me. I like the idea of having a positive influence on others.
Sure.
I wanted that for the longest time. I'd never realized until much later in my life that the only way to do that was to live my life. And by living my life, I would have influence on people.
And living your life, showing up, focusing on what you can control. Those things are one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself. And as you're saying, the influence from that version of you is limitless. It
is.
Yeah.
It's limitless. And the power of it, that's the part that it's almost astonishing, the amount of power that comes out of it. Yes. And I don't mean the kind of power where you have power over people and you're able to give orders and all that kind of stuff. That's not the kind of power I'm talking about. I'm talking about the kind of power where you do something and the ripple effect plays out and you say, wow, there was a lot of ripple that came off of that.
Yeah.
not intentional.
Yep.
This is an important piece for me because, like, I've had conversations. I mean, we talk somewhat about law of attraction, but we don't talk about it like we used to. I mean,
Right.
Back in the day, that was all we talked about for the entire show.
Yeah.
Now we kind of tie it in for about 5 minutes. But I've had conversations with people, I'm sure you have as well, who have advocated the idea that they can attract into their lives the kind of reactions from the people they want to influence on demand. They can basically control people through the law of attraction. And they've tried to demonstrate it to me. They tried to argue for it. They point to teachings of Neville Goddard. I mean, all kinds of stuff that they will do to try to make that point. And for a while, I actually would engage with them and say, well, you're really just influencing them, and they wouldn't buy into that. But nevertheless, they keep making their argument. And I was trying to understand what their mindset really was. I mean, I kind of got it. I knew there's a certain egoistic attraction to being able to control somebody else. I kind of get that.
Sure.
But after a while, I also began to say to myself, like, how long do you go with that? Because these people were just going on and on and on with it. And it took me the longest time to finally realize that it wasn't so much that they were able to control other people, because it turned out they really weren't. They thought they would get a positive result in certain cases. So they figured, okay, that means that I can control people. But if they actively tried to apply it and it didn't work, they would just kind of pretend it didn't happen so they could continue with a perfect track record.
Sure.
It was that kind of a thing. Right.
Yeah.
So I would ask myself, like, well, why would you stick with that? Why would you do that? And then it finally occurred to me, the reason you do that is because you don't have a Stoic mindset.
Yes.
You don't have a mindset that says there are so many things that are not in your control. You simply need to give your attention to the things you can control. They didn't want that mindset. That mindset was uncomfortable to them.
Right.
And so they avoided it. And when I finally realized that, I said, wow, that's really astonishing. You can actually get to the point where you understand something about the law of attraction pretty well and still not get it.
Well, I had a lady show up. We talked about this several years ago. I remember this one very specifically. So she is one of the first clients that ever reached out to me, and specifically for a session about the law of attraction. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've never had that happen. I've always
exciting, right?
Yeah, I've always introduced the law of attraction into sessions, but I've never had one called, let me just start out. So I was thinking, this is going to be great.
Yeah.
And so she's explaining her story. So she was in love with her boss at work. She said, we were having an affair. I'm in love with him. And I said, okay, that's great. And she said, but he's married. And I said, okay, well, is he getting divorced? No, he's very clear he will not get divorced. He has 3 kids. He's not getting divorced. How can I make him love me so much he'll get a divorce? I said, you can't. I said, it doesn't work that way. And I was trying to explain to her, I said, here's what the law of attraction can do. Now, if you identify that here's what he represents that I want to have, then you can use the law of attraction to attract someone who has his qualities and demeanor, probably somebody that wouldn't cheat on his wife. You want to add that in there, but that
would be a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. And she said, no, I specifically want him. And I said, well, I'm unaware. She said, but the law of attraction says I can have whatever I want. I said, no, it doesn't. It's you have identified part of it, but this man's married and said he will not get a divorce. He will not marry you. He will probably keep sleeping with you. And as long as that goes, but you're not going to be able to get married and have a family with him because he's told you no to that. So and she argued, she spent basically the whole time. I said, well, you came to me for advice on the law of attraction. I'm telling you how it works. So the area of your control is I've identified what I want in a partner. Here's an example. Let me attract that, understanding it won't be him. And she really got mad, and she goes, that's not acceptable. So I said, yeah, it sucks, but I don't know what to tell you. So the part that matters there is law of attraction is not about controlling others.
Right.
One of the things Mike Dooley was talking about one time about a kid wanting a specific bike that belonged to his friend. And Mike was trying, and he said, well, I want that specific bike. And he's using that as sort of an analogy. And he said, you can have a bike like that one, but you can't have that one. And we have a tendency to not understand you attract the emotion of what's attached to that, not the actual literal, you can't go in. I mean, unless you got millions of dollars, you just can't walk up to somebody's house and say, I like your house and I want to buy it today.
Yeah, I mean, it is possible.
It's possible. But
I mean, it's not that it's impossible, but it's not something I'd want to bet on.
Well, no, I mean, but as far as the law, I mean, I could go buy somebody's house, and just say, your house is worth $1 million. I'm going to give you $3 million right now. They likely are going to say, let's get packed and get out of here,
Unless they like the house so much that they don't care and they don't want to sell it.
Yeah, I mean, it
can go either way.
Well, my house down in Florida, I've been offered a lot of money for the house. No, I want the house. So it's, I get it. But the energy, a belief that you can sort of force other people to feel or do a certain thing or control them based on either with Stoicism or law of attraction it doesn't remotely work. Stoicism is what I call the filtering for the law of attraction. It allows you to see it in the areas that I can control. So let's put our focus on that. Let's focus on being calm. Let's focus on attracting what we want. Stoicism teaches that.
Right. One of the fascinating things from my perspective with the people who do believe they should be able to attract any specific thing, no matter what, any specific person, control them in some way. The fascinating part to me is that they often have, I would say probably always have, a very poor understanding of what the whole vibrational process of the law of attraction is.
Yes.
Like they don't seem to grasp what the vibration piece means. And they seem to fail to understand that vibration happens because of the thought associated with it. It's because of the mindset and the consciousness of the person who is doing the vibrating. One of my favorite ways to look at it when I was understanding it, when I was trying to learn the whole thing, was to realize, well, we've got close to 8 billion people here on the planet, all of whom are attracting. And they're not the only ones who are attracting. Those are just the humans.
Right.
I mean, there are animals, insects. I mean, there's all kinds of attracting going on all over the place. So there's vibration going on everywhere. I mean, it's just like we're living in this field of massive amounts of vibrations, and they're kind of like bouncing all off each other and off everything else. And there's ripple effects across ripples, and there's all this stuff going on. And then you have the person who's saying, well, I can control anybody that I want to in that field. And all I can think is, are you nuts? Don't you realize how much vibration is going on in that field? You're doing great when you're attracting to you the stuff that is in attunement with what it is that you're attracting, that is of the same vibration. You're doing great when you do that. But you expect the entire universe to line up with you as if you're the only one doing any attracting?
Well, it's similar to my book, and everybody, I totally admit I don't share the exact views of every single person on law of attraction. Everybody sort of has their own view. I've always said my flavor of law of attraction has never accepted that I want to sit on the couch and attract $1 million.
Right.
Just that. Now, I'm not saying people haven't done that. I don't believe that can happen. So my law of attraction has an action component that's necessary to work. Right. So now, is it necessary for everybody? I don't think so. But for me, I believe action, the aligned action is the most efficient, effective way to manifest what you want. The action matching the, not from a space of lack or whatever, but space of, how we know how to do it. So I've never been a subscriber of, yes, just sit on your couch, $1 million will show up, and the woman of your dreams is going to knock as well. I have never attracted sitting on the couch. I've attracted an incredible amount about taking action and going out and doing money flows. It's so easy, but mine has an action component that's necessary.
Which fits beautifully with the topic, with the idea of Stoicism being a mindset that gives you the opportunity to focus your attention and give your attention to the options that are available to you rather than to the ones that aren't.
Yes.
Because when you do that's where you get that experience that you're describing.
We are the most powerful. All of us are very powerful. I tell people all the time, you're far more powerful than you possibly can imagine. I say that often. Where that power exists is what we're talking about. controlling what you control, understanding that you have zero power in 99% of what goes on in the world. You have no power, but you have unlimited power in the areas that we're talking about: your thoughts, your actions, what you do, getting up, showing up on time. You're very there's a lot of actions that are in your direct control: your perspective, your mindset, being grateful, waking up every day and attune and making sure your mind is tuned into an attitude of gratitude, that it's a necessary component. Your perspective of belief in yourself, a belief in you being healthy, a belief that you can do. I don't believe, there's certain physical limitations that I've always sort of accepted. I am not at my age going to be an NBA player. I've just accepted that. In fact, in my prime, I was not going to be an NBA player. No matter how much work I did, it was just not my skill set. But there's a lot of things that I'm good at, and a lot of things that I developed, and I'm really good at the areas that I have grown and built in that area. One of the things I like about watching the Olympics is these are the most fascinating athletes in the world. They're just so dedicated.
Oh, yes.
There's a gentleman, and I just caught the glimpse. I don't know who he is or what the sport is, but he's on cross country skis. He's going up a mountain on cross country skis. He's traveling at 12 miles an hour up the mountain.
That's
and
insane.
There's a cardiologist that he's sort of talking about the conditioning at the interview. He said, if the average person were to attempt that, they would have a cardiac arrest probably within 3 minutes.
Yeah.
It would take years to develop that capacity. Uphill, running at 12 miles an hour, which is if you go run downhill at 12 miles an hour, that's fast. It's like
that's faster than most people who can run.
Yeah. So he's on skis up a mountain at 12 miles an hour. Fascinating topic. Let's see these incredible flips these guys are doing, all these things they're doing. It's just they're so in tune. So I look at that, and these people have realized this is sort of a Stoic philosophy that they use. They understand the training that's necessary, what's in their control. They go all in on the things that are in control. They're the most elite of the elite athletes, and they train at a level, and they understand that. So it's a really incredible combination of belief, also understanding training's in your control. They have regimens that they follow. It's so scientific now. They do it exactly right.
We only have about 5 or 6 minutes left, but I want to touch on a piece that I don't think we've ever talked about, particularly where Stoicism is concerned. I know we haven't talked about it, but I want to bring it in anyway because I think it's really fascinating. The idea that as a person who's following the options that are available to you, you end up in a place where you discover what passions are in life.
Yes.
Because I don't think that's ever, I mean, I haven't studied all the Stoic philosophers, so maybe there are some who talked about that. I don't recall reading anything along that line. But nevertheless, I've discovered through my own life that actually happens. I mean, for me, the most recent example, I have, as you know, I have a background in IT. I've been doing IT pretty much since I got out of school, not because I had any training in it, but just because I was good at it. It just came to me naturally. And I was getting out of school at a time when computers were just beginning to be used by the population. So they needed people like me to help other people use computers. And it worked out okay. The problem was I had no passion for it. I was good at it. That's all. But I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't fun. I ended up making a career where I got better and better in terms of my income and got better jobs and so forth. And then I ended up becoming an entrepreneur, and they were all IT related stuff, but I was just pursuing the money. I really didn't like any of it. I didn't enjoy any of it until now. And bear in mind, listeners know I went through my crash and burn in 2008. And then there was the 4-year period before I started the podcast. And then all that was like the worst period that I went through. I had another one coming up with the divorce, but that's another story too. But the point is, I was going through all this stuff, and I still had never found a passion. In fact, for me, really, the first passion, you may remember this, my first passion was realizing I had the passion of doing the podcast. Yeah. I was like, oh my God, I have a breakthrough there. I haven't figured out how to make money at it, but hey, wow, this is great. I'm loving this stuff. And that's the way I've treated it to this day. But I pretty much gave up on my IT career because I just lost interest. I literally burned out on the idea of continuing it because I didn't have a passion for it.
Yeah.
And then along comes AI. And I had never had any intention of getting involved in artificial intelligence. I knew about the ideas long before it became a big deal, but I had no interest in pursuing any of it. I didn't think any of it was going to be fun. I didn't think anything was going to be interesting. And then ChatGPT comes out, and I didn't even hear about it for the first couple of years. That's how far I had withdrawn from the whole market. But once I heard about it, I said, well, that's kind of cool. I started playing with it and found for the first time in my life, there's something in IT that I actually get passionate about. Like, this is fun. Yeah. This is really interesting. And as a result, I find today, I mean, literally today, these days, I spend the vast majority of my time working on my AI projects, like 90% of my time working on AI projects and having a blast doing it and learning all kinds of stuff along the way, both about how AI works and about my interaction with AI and how AI affects my mindset. And oh, by the way, how it affects my Stoic views. I mean, it all ties together. So I bring that in to say, you know, Stoicism leads you to, among other things, finding your passion. And I never, if you had asked me, I think that happens back when we first connected in 2012, I would say, oh, I suppose anything's possible, but I never would have believed it was actually going to happen that way.
Yeah.
And yet, Stoicism actually led to helping me find my passion.
Well, and I think that's you know, I've studied Stoicism very deep, and I don't know of any specific philosopher that got that direct on it. They got on the outskirts of that, but I don't know anybody that ever sort of framed it that way.
Right.
But Stoicism would lead to passion because when you're focusing on what's in your control and you're limited, you're going after those things you like, then you find passion. You find you weed the rest out.
Well, not only do you weed it out, you open yourself up to.
Yes. When I started doing my private practice, and I'm going really. I started in 2012. Here we are now, and all these years later, I don't have to work anymore, and I still work. I love it. I'm passionate about it. I don't know what I would do if I didn't do it. It's really fun. I love seeing people light up with these concepts. Stoicism. My young people love Stoicism. It's giving them a sort of a real simple way of dealing with things. Believe it or not, it's really good with addiction clients too, because you're able to say, wait a minute, you're so stuck on these things that are out of your control. Where does your control exist in this process?
Right.
Where Stoicism allows us to see in the addictive process, where is your control versus, because one of the things I dislike about 12-step programs is there's a general concept that you're powerless. Stoicism tells you you are powerful in some areas. Let's find those areas and apply our energy and effort to those areas.
I would suggest that that's probably the number one reason why people who only pursue 12-step for recovery recover only 6% of the time, as you told us on numerous occasions.
Yeah. So it's fascinating. Passion, passion when you wake up with a purpose and a reason. I wake up, I love my whole routine is just getting up and getting going. There's never a moment of, oh my gosh, what, and I'm human. Sometimes I'm waking up, but I quickly adjust that mindset. I don't leave the house without an adjusted mindset. That's a prerequisite for me.
Yeah. In fact, you've talked about how you adjust your mindset from the moment you get up. You have a certain practice you do. You got your 5 gratitude things.
Yes.
Then you go to the gym. I mean, you have these things that you do every single day that maintain the development of that growth mindset. That's really what it is a growth mindset.
Yeah, and having fun doing it, being passionate about it, laughing a lot, I enjoy my life so much, and I've conditioned my brain to enjoy my life so much. It's a very and Stoicism is I will always say, to me, the law of attraction is maybe my greatest discovery in life. I believe that. The side 1A is Stoicism.
Okay. Well, they certainly go hand in hand. I mean,
they go hand in hand. I will always, my discovery of the law of attraction really changed things. My discovery of Stoicism and how it affects the law of attraction is sort of the ultimate connection I made.
It tied the whole thing together.
It tied it together for me because, like you were saying earlier, you and I wish I should go back and live. When we first started, we were just so baffled by this law of attraction thing.
We were trying to be as expert as we could.
We made it so complicated. We were talking about it, and in retrospect, it's like we couldn't accept that it was just that simple. We just couldn't accept it.
Yep.
At that time, we clearly do now, but it's such a simple process, and Stoicism matches that. I really encourage Ryan Holiday is what I call a modern Stoic. He wrote "The Obstacle Is the Way." He's done a lot of background on Stoicism. He actually lives up in Charlottesville, Virginia. I've met him once, so solid guy. So if you want deeper studies on that, Ryan Holiday, "The Obstacle Is the Way," some of his other books. There's tons of great stuff on Marcus Aurelius is a great place to go. Just so many things are out there. So a deep dive into Stoicism is not a waste of time.
No, there's going to be value in any of the authors that you read within that genre. So yeah, good stuff. All right. Well, I think Jen's going to be happy with the topic. We did a good job.
Great topic, Jen. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.